together what we thought was studies together. Running around doing models, he was always known as the more intellectual among us. That is everything. Much better read more of non-economic disciplines than we ever had. So, and obviously that shows in the presentation that he made. And since he hasn't said anything that was provocative, excepting Shekhar. So what I'm going to do is try and dig up some more information. In particular, some of the things that you said. The one thing I think we need to harp on really a lot in India is the fact that the observation that he made in passing, though he emphasized it but he made it only once, is that when it comes to poverty alleviation, just the poverty alleviation programs alone will not work. And I want to underline that point by saying that if we look at what lack of governance, poor infrastructure, bad health, less education, all that it does is affect the poor. And if it does affect the rich, it affects the poor even more seriously. So in that sense, many of the poverty alleviation programs have to be done around the poor, not at the poor. And unfortunately, we have not been doing this. Something I thought, that in East Asia is quite remarkable, is that their focus on health and education has preceded all the industrialization and investment in those areas. So that is something that he stressed, I think needs to be kept in mind. That's a very important point. The second thing that he said was on heterodox thinking, and also on public debate in India versus that in China. Now, I was lucky to be in a discussion in China with some Chinese before they came out and made like a press conference. It was amazing to see what went on inside the room. For my benefit, it may have been done. Much of it was in Chinese, and the interpreter was being, half nice to me. So I was sure that he was not interpreting everything. It was amazing to see the level of debate. Face becoming red and all of that, really fighting with each other. And then they come to a consensus. When they come out and say whatever they have to say, everybody behind them is clapping. I don't think that we should feel too great about the fact that in India we have public debate and China does not. Because there is a difference in the way we do things, and in India there is no public debate, frankly, let's face it. All in committees which are supposed to look after it, or come up with a new policy, as the secretary of some government department, as the chair. I've been on many of these committees, walked out from many of them, because the committee, the report is already written. And the report is already written. This becomes an expert group. And in India you become expert given that you are on various committees. It's not the other way around. It should be the other way around. Because you're an expert, you should be on committees. You should not be an expert because you have been on committees. So I'm not so sure about the public debate in India. It doesn't take place. There is this big thing that is done of putting up things on the website. Then you are asked to respond. People respond. None of the responses are taken. I have seen the responses and I have seen how it works. Unless, and these are the sorts of research we should be doing to understand how our systems work or does not work. So unless it is somebody big who is saying something, and that also maybe a passing reference. I remember there was somebody who said a lot about the bankruptcy rule, was quite famous. So there was a footnote which says that so and so, however we thought that and did exactly what they wanted to. So that is not called public debate. So and the problem we have in India is that administrators decide what should be implemented. It is a complete norm. Because if I am being judged by what I implement, and if I am to implement policy, I will always write the policy in a way that I can implement and get good marks for it. And it is a simple understanding which we do not have, that administrators implement a policy that is made away from them. Right? And then it is given to them, and then they can say whether it can be implemented or not. This is like solving a linear programming problem where the constraints are last year's production. efficiency and linear prototyping problem will be solved by using as constraints what we produced last year. So if it was inefficient then, it will be inefficient now. This simple understanding we do not have when we make policy. So I would say, right, that we should be very careful about trying to see what India is doing and what China is doing when it comes to public debate, especially in policy. The more serious thing I think which we should all think about, and this is not a difference between India and China, but I think it involves almost all emerging economies. We have to do it, and some of the innovations that we will do will be more on the social sectors, right, than on things like industry, services, and all that. But the problem is that we are going to use, since nothing in the world is disconnected from everything else, especially now, we are going to use ideas that may have been developed elsewhere. And this is of serious consequence for us, and since you're talking of strategy, right, I don't think we're thinking about it enough in India, that given the new IP regimes that are coming up, and almost the fact that universities are being encouraged in the West for the university researchers to start patenting what they're doing, right? The space for public knowledge is getting more and more and more restricted. And since we are late entrants, it will be extremely difficult for us. I don't know if you recall, when Qualcomm first started, now of course there's a lot of investment in that actual R&D production. But when it first started, the only thing it used to do is collect patents and then go and bully players in different countries who are trying to start up production, claiming that I have patents there. Very difficult for a young industry or young company in an emerging country to go and fight a case in New York. So this was the sort of untwisting that used to happen. Of course, then Qualcomm has now become a patent-producing industry, so it is no longer thought as bad as it was thought of then. But these are issues that we have to worry about, and there is no strategic thinking on these in India. Now, when say China is going in this in its own way, but and I don't know whether it will be successful or not. But since we believe in heterodoxy, therefore it is a good idea to try something different. And in India, I think one of the biggest advantages that we could leverage ourselves on is something that we said about the strategy. There are two aspects to this. And this is where I think I may disagree slightly with you. Right? Now, because the strategic play that we talked about with East Asia as well as with Japan, South Korea and all of that, and Taiwan, I think. Now, the issue is that these are all success stories. There have been equal amounts of strategizing done in various other countries which have been complete failures. America, African countries. India itself has done strategizing. The second 5-year plan was a very long-term strategy on where India would go. And it didn't happen. So therefore two issues come up. One is, can we think of smart people? Right? And give us the strategy that we want. The second thing is, can we think of heterodoxy, public debate, the advantages that we have as a democratic rule of our country? Then can those give us the direction? Why? Because we are a large economy. We can try experiments. If something fails, we can fine-tune, we can quickly change, right? Instead of trying to get to that one strategy which will take us wherever we have to go. The other issue I think which is important is that if we consider carefully, right? For example, I've talked to a lot of defense people who are very strong on strategy. They understand these concepts much better than most of our policymakers, or most people do, right? That why is a strategy important? What is a strategy? Everybody thinks of strategy as a goal and a path, but that's not a strategy. And the only people who could actually appreciate those issues were the defense people in India, which is quite shocking to me. But it was easy for them to understand what they have to do because they know what the goal is. They're very clear on this goal. Right? No security. For us, I don't think we have that single goal so that we can work out. So much of the time we are spending in deciding what the goal should be. If we were much more clear in our thinking and say, and said that we do not want to see poverty by the year 2020, I think we could do a much better job at strategizing, right, than what we're doing now. So I'm a bit worried about, even if we pick up the good people, We're not giving them a goal to achieve. Something like going to the moon by such and such time, it looks funny. But that is the sort of goal we need on our society. That, a goal like we will not allow a person who is born today to be out of school. It gives us 5 years to plan, right, before this thing goes. So we should have those strategies will work. But if we just want to work out a strategy for the country, given our fragmentation, diverse views, and all of that, I don't think that strategizing will work. We will just become a team of experts who know everything, and we'll go back to the pre-91 days. So that's one thing that I want to highlight. Stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Subhashish. Shall I ask Shekhar to say a few things and then we open up for discussion?
I have no right of
No,
but
I can leave. Yeah, that's fine.
So I just thought I'd mention one or two things. One, I think following up on what Subhashish said, the notion that somehow intrinsically democracy or debate is a prerogative of Indians and not so much of China, I think it's a very mistaken notion, and I would urge you to be a lot more careful in founding that view.